This is Autobiography of a Yogi, written by Paramahansa Yogananda, one of the most beloved spiritual classics of modern times. This book is more than an autobiography. It is a doorway into a world where the divine and the human walk together, where saints and sages appear not as distant figures of legend, but as living reminders of what is possible when the soul turns toward God. Paramahansa Yogananda shares with us his own journey, from his childhood in India, to his search for a true guru, to his meeting with Mahavatar Babaji, Lahiri Mahasaya, and finally his arrival in the West, where he brought Kriya Yoga to countless seekers. For generations, this book has been a guiding light, inspiring readers from all walks of life, scientists, artists, leaders, and simple seekers, to look within and discover their eternal nature. As you listen, may these words open your heart and awaken in you the same yearning for God that carried Yogananda through every chapter of his life. This is not just the story of one man. It is a map for every soul that longs to return home. Chapter 1. My Parents and Early Life. My parents and ancestors lived in Gorakhpur, a city in northeastern India. My father, Bhagabati Charan Ghosh, was kind, disciplined, and deeply devoted to spiritual principles. My mother, Gyamprabha Devi, was gentle, compassionate, and held within her a quiet but unshakable faith in God. I was born on January 5, 1893. From my earliest days, I felt drawn toward the spiritual world, sensing that life was not limited to material existence. My family was religious, and I often heard prayers, chants, and stories of saints filling our home. These impressions left a deep mark on me. Our family belonged to a respected lineage of kshatriyas, traditionally warriors and rulers. Yet for us, the true strength was always seen as inner strength, the courage to follow truth and God's will above all. My parents raised us with discipline, but also with love. One of the earliest memories I carry is of my mother's tender care and her profound devotion. She taught me to see divinity in everyone. Her gentle presence instilled in me the belief that God is not distant, but ever near, guiding us silently through life. My father's nature was calm and strong, his character deeply rooted in duty and righteousness. Though he worked in the railways, his heart remained tied to higher ideals. He taught me patience, self-control, and respect for discipline, qualities that would serve me in the spiritual path ahead. Even as a child, I often felt restless in the world. I longed for the Himalayas, imagining great saints meditating in their caves. It was as if an inner call kept reminding me that my true home was not in worldly comforts but in the search for God. This early foundation, parents devoted to virtue, a home filled with faith, and a heart yearning for the divine, was the soil in which the seeds of my spiritual journey took root. Chapter 2. My mother's death and the mystic amulet. The years of childhood are often painted with joy, innocence, and the security of a mother's presence. For me, too, those early years carried the fragrance of my mother's love. She was not only the gentle caretaker of our home, but also a deeply spiritual soul. Her devotion to God was like a silent current that ran through our family life, always reminding us that there was more to existence than the outer world. But life is never free from trials. At the age of 11, a sorrow came that shook me to the very core of my being. My beloved mother passed away. I still remember the day as though a heavy curtain had fallen between me and the light. No longer did her warm hands touch my forehead. No longer did her voice call me with affection. The house seemed empty, even though people still moved about in it. For me, the heart of that home had gone. Her death left in me not just grief, but a restlessness, a deep question. If love, the greatest bond in the world, can be snatched away by death, then what is truly lasting? What is eternal? It was in this darkness that her hidden gift revealed itself. Many years earlier, when I was only a child, a wandering saint had come to our home. His eyes glowed with a strange light, as though he could see far beyond ordinary vision. He had spoken words to my mother that she never forgot. He said, "This amulet is meant for your son. When the proper time arrives, it will come to him and lead him on the path destined for him. That saint placed in her hand a small, radiant amulet. It was not like an ordinary trinket, nor was it made of common metal. It seemed alive with a subtle energy, as though holding within it a mystery from higher worlds. My mother treasured it, keeping it safe, waiting for the right moment. When she passed away, the amulet came into my possession. The first time I held it, I felt a strange assurance, as if her love had not truly left me. Though her body was gone, her blessing was still alive in that object. The amulet became a silent companion in my early quest for God. I cannot describe the comfort it brought me. Whenever I felt alone, whenever sorrow overpowered me, I would look at the amulet, and it was as if my mother's presence returned. It whispered silently, "Do not think I am gone. My love still surrounds you. And through this amulet, you will be guided to the divine purpose for which you were born." This small relic taught me something profound, that the bonds of spirit are never broken by death. When we love in God, that love continues, even when the body is no more. My mother's departure had created a void, but the amulet filled that void with faith. It reminded me that death is not the end, but only a passage to another realm. The grief of losing her also sharpened my inner longing. At such a young age, I began to ask questions far deeper than my years. What is the soul? Where do we go after death? How can one reach that eternal presence which cannot be destroyed by time? These questions became the burning fire of my life, and the amulet was like a lamp in my hand, lighting the path of my search. But little did I know then that this small token, shining so mysteriously, would also one day vanish, reminding me that no outer symbol, however sacred, can take the place of God Himself. The amulet was a guide, but the destination was beyond it, towards the living presence of the divine. And so, my mother's death, painful as it was, became the beginning of my deeper spiritual journey. She left me not just with sorrow, but with a treasure that pushed me closer to God. The amulet was her silent farewell and her eternal blessing. Chapter 3. The Saint with Two Bodies. After my mother's passing and the sacred memory of her amulet, my young life turned more and more toward the search for saints. I was still a boy, but I had already decided that this ordinary world, its joys and sorrows, could never satisfy the hunger of my soul. What I longed for was not money, nor fame, nor comfort, but the living presence of God and those rare souls who had realized Him. One such encounter remains unforgettable in my early years, the meeting with the saint who was known to appear in two places at once. His name was Bhaduri Mahasaya, though people around me often called him the two-bodied Swami. From the outside, he seemed to live like a simple recluse in Benares, quietly meditating in his modest room. But stories about him spread across the city like fire. They said he could project his consciousness and appear miles away, carrying out actions as if he were physically there, while at the same time remaining seated in meditation. This ability is known in yoga as Prapti Siddhi, one of the higher powers that come to those who have mastered the inner laws of energy and mind. I was filled with eagerness to see him. Guided by relatives, I was brought before this remarkable sage. When I first saw him, I was struck by his calm dignity. His body was frail, but his eyes shone with an eternal light. Around him there was no noise, no movement, only the quiet of one who is established in the self. People would gather and speak in hushed tones, often sharing miraculous tales. One devotee told me how, in a moment of danger, the Swami had appeared suddenly in front of him, even though at the same time others had seen him quietly meditating at home. Another spoke of being guided in a dream that later turned out to be a physical encounter with the saint. What astonished me most was not just the miracles themselves, but the saint's complete humility. He never boasted of his powers. In fact, when pressed by admirers, he would laugh softly and say, "Why chase after these little tricks? Seek the one reality. Miracles are but byproducts of divine union." The true miracle is to know God. I realized then a truth that stayed with me forever. Spirituality is not about displays of power. Saints may possess powers beyond imagination, but their real greatness lies in their God consciousness, in their ability to see beyond the illusions of the material world. That day, sitting quietly in his presence, I felt a deep shift within me. My young mind, restless with grief and longing, tasted for the first time the peace of divine company. The saint's words and vibration penetrated my heart like sunlight breaking through clouds. I also learned something else. The possibility of being in two places at once pointed to a profound yogic reality, that we are not bound by this body. The soul, when freed from the restless mind, can transcend space and time. To the ordinary man, this seems impossible. But to a yogi who has disciplined his consciousness, it is as natural as breathing. When I left Paduri Mahasaya's room, the noise of the outside world seemed faint and unreal. My heart carried only one conviction. The human body is not our prison but our instrument. If guided rightly, it can reveal infinite possibilities. That encounter deepened my faith. It told me that saints are not myths of the past. They walk among us, here and now. And each one is a doorway through which we can glimpse the eternal. The saint with two bodies had given me not just a glimpse of the extraordinary, but a taste of the eternal truth, that the soul is free, radiant, and boundless. Chapter 4. My interrupted flight toward the Himalayas. By this time, my yearning for the divine had become unbearable. Every cell in my body cried out for God. Books on yoga and saints of India only fanned the flame. But more than anything, I longed for the Himalayas. To my young heart, the Himalayas were not merely mountains of snow and rock. They were the throne of eternity, the silent abode where yogis communed with God face to face. I dreamed night and day of renouncing everything, family, studies, worldly obligations, and escaping to that sacred wilderness where saints like Mahavatar Babaji were said to dwell. At last, I could no longer restrain myself. I secretly planned my escape. My cousin Amar shared the same thirst for adventure and agreed to join me. We told no one in our family. Quietly, with a few coins and a fierce determination, we set out one morning. Our destination, nothing less than the eternal snows. The train ride itself felt like the beginning of liberation. Each turn of the wheels seemed to take me closer to my destiny. In my heart, I imagined myself already a yogi sitting in a Himalayan cave, clothed in silence, drinking only the nectar of meditation. But destiny had other plans. At the station where we were to change trains, our small secret was discovered. My elder brother, Ananta, had somehow learned of my plan. He arrived with stern eyes and the authority of an elder sibling. My dream of disappearing into the Himalayas was crushed in an instant. Ananta scolded me fiercely. "You are still a boy. You belong at home, with your family, with your studies. Do you think you can run away from your duties?" His words burned like fire, but they carried the weight of responsibility. Tears welled in my eyes. To be pulled back from the edge of freedom felt unbearable. Yet, in the silence of my heart, I also knew that God was speaking through him. My time for renunciation had not yet come. The divine had other lessons for me to learn first, lessons that would prepare me for the true life of a yogi. Though I obeyed and returned home, the fire within me did not die. If anything, it grew stronger. I realized that running away is not the true path. Escaping to the Himalayas can bring silence, yes, but the real Himalayas are inside us. If the mind is restless, even the deepest cave will not give peace. But if the mind is stilled, even the busiest marketplace can be a Himalayan cave. This lesson would take years for me to fully understand. At that time, I felt only the pain of disappointment. But later, when I looked back, I saw that God himself had stopped me. My guru, my destiny, and the entire flow of my future mission required me to stay. The work I was to do in the world could not have been accomplished if I had vanished into a mountain cave. So, my interrupted flight was not a failure. It was divine redirection. The Himalayas remained my symbol of ultimate freedom, but I now carried them in my heart, knowing that the path to God begins not by running away, but by transforming oneself where one stands. Chapter 5. A Perfume Saint displays his wonders. In the village where I grew up, whispers of saints and their miracles were common, but rarely did one encounter such a soul in person. One day, I was introduced to a remarkable ascetic known to the villagers as a Perfume Saint. His fame was not only for his spiritual attainments, but for the inexplicable fragrance that seemed to follow him wherever he went. The first time I saw him, I was struck by his calm presence. It was not the flamboyance of a showman that caught attention, but the subtle, quiet aura of a man who had nothing to prove. The air around him seemed imbued with a delicate fragrance, neither perfume nor incense, but something alive, something divine, as if the very breath of God itself lingered about him. People said he could appear in multiple places at once, though his body remained in one location. Many spoke of witnessing him materialize flowers, fruits, or holy ash in the blink of an eye. To the skeptical, these were tricks, but to those whose hearts were attuned, they were glimpses of a deeper reality, a world beyond the ordinary senses. One afternoon, I visited him with a few elders from my village. He sat in meditation beneath the shade of a large tree, eyes closed, radiating stillness. As we approached, the fragrance grew more intense, filling the space with a sense of peace that words cannot describe. Without speaking, he beckoned us to sit around him. Then something extraordinary happened. From thin air, tiny particles seemed to drift down. Perfume, they said, though it was unlike any known scent. It touched our clothes, our hair, even our skin, and yet there was no visible source. A subtle, joyful energy arose in our hearts. Some of the elders wept silently. Even I felt tears welling without knowing why. It was as if the divine itself was pouring through him. Curious, I asked him how he could perform such wonders. The saint opened his eyes for the first time and smiled. His gaze was deep, penetrating, and yet tender. "My son," he said softly, "these miracles are not to amaze the mind, but to awaken the heart. God's presence can manifest in ways that the senses can perceive, if only the soul is receptive. The fragrance you sense is the perfume of divine consciousness, not mine. The wonders you see are but reflections of the infinite." I realized then that miracles are not about power or spectacle, they are about consciousness. A saint's greatest wonder is not in the things he can produce, but in the hearts he awakens. The perfume, the flowers, the sudden appearances, all these were mere signs, pointers toward a reality beyond the material. That day, I spent hours in his presence, observing the simplicity of his life. He ate sparingly, lived in a humble hut, and spent his days in meditation, prayer, and service. Yet the impact he had on others was profound. Devotees came from distant villages, not for gifts or blessings alone, but for the silent teaching of his presence, the subtle way in which he communicated love, compassion, and divine awareness. I left that encounter with a sense of awe and a deepened longing for God. The Perfume Saint had shown me that the path of a yogi is not merely about rigorous practice or extraordinary feats, but about embodying divine consciousness in every act, in every breath, and in every thought. In the years that followed, I often recalled his lessons. Miracles are not for the ego, they are for awakening. The presence of a saint is itself a teaching. Love and consciousness are the true perfumes of the soul. Through him, I understood that the divine does not always reveal itself in the way we expect. Sometimes it whispers through fragrance, a gentle touch, a fleeting vision, quiet reminders that the infinite is closer than we think. Thus, the Perfume Saint became for me a living example of what it means to harmonize the inner and outer worlds, to reflect God's presence effortlessly, and to awaken others through being rather than through words alone. Chapter 6. The Levitating Saint. In my spiritual journey, I had heard many stories of yogis and saints performing miracles, but none prepared me for the awe I experienced when I met the levitating saint. Unlike tales passed down in villages or written in scriptures, this was a living encounter, a phenomenon that transcended imagination and touched the very core of my being. He lived in a remote hermitage, high up in the mountains, where the air was thin, crisp, and alive with the subtle energy of nature. The path to his abode was steep, winding through forests where sunlight danced between leaves, and the scent of pine mingled with the earthy fragrance of the soil. It was as if the universe itself was preparing me for an extraordinary experience. When I first saw him, he sat cross-legged in meditation, suspended slightly above the ground. His body floated effortlessly, without support or any visible means. The villagers nearby simply called him the levitating saint, but even that title fell short of capturing the truth of his presence. His aura radiated stillness and absolute control, a testament to years of disciplined practice, inner focus, and divine alignment. I approached cautiously, unsure if my eyes were deceiving me. The closer I came, the more palpable the vibration around him became. It was a subtle hum, a resonance of pure consciousness that seemed to make the very air vibrate. Birds perched on nearby branches did not flinch, and even the wind seemed to pause in respect. "Do not be afraid," he spoke softly, though he had not moved his lips. His words seemed to enter directly into my mind, bypassing the need for sound. "What you see is not magic, nor is it a display of power. It is the natural state of one who has transcended the limitations of the body and mind. Your perception must adjust to see what the soul already knows." He then guided me through a meditation, instructing me to focus on the breath, the flow of life energy, and the center of consciousness within. As I followed his instructions, I could feel subtle vibrations rising along my spine, awakening dormant energy centers. My awareness expanded beyond the physical body, and a deep sense of unity with the universe enveloped me. The saint explained, "Levitating is not an end in itself. It is a natural consequence of mastering the mind, body, and prana. When the ego dissolves, the pull of gravity diminishes in consciousness. The soul becomes lighter because it is no longer weighed down by attachment, fear, or desire." He spoke of the 3 keys to such spiritual attainment. Control of prana, the life force, or prana, must flow unhindered through the Sushumna, Ida, and Pingala channels. This energy sustains not only the body, but awakens higher consciousness. Mastery over the mind. The mind must be disciplined, focused, and serene. Only when thought is quiet can the body release its limitations. Union with divine will. Every action, breath, and thought must align with the divine, dissolving the sense of individual self. I spent hours with him, witnessing his meditative practices, learning the subtleties of energy control, and observing the profound effect he had on those around him. People came from far-off villages, not to see him levitate, but to feel the peace and wisdom he radiated. Children, elders, and seekers alike were touched by the calm intensity of his presence. One afternoon, he allowed me to experience levitation for a few moments. With guidance, I felt my body lift slightly from the ground, not by willpower, but by surrender. Complete surrender to the divine energy flowing through me. In that fleeting moment, I understood what saints mean when they speak of freedom, lightness, and transcendence. The levitating saint also emphasized the importance of humility and service. He reminded me that miracles are not trophies or spectacles to impress others. They are manifestations of a consciousness aligned with the divine. The true power of a yogi lies not in visible feats but in awakening others, guiding them toward the realization of their own divine nature. By the time I left his hermitage, the sun was dipping behind the mountains, casting golden light on the forest. The memory of his floating form, serene gaze, and gentle guidance stayed with me. I realized that the extraordinary is often a reflection of the inner world. When the soul is free, the body and mind follow naturally. The levitating saint taught me that true yogic power is subtle, silent, and transformative. It is not measured by how high one can float, but by how deeply one can awaken, heal, and illuminate the hearts of others. Chapter 7. Visits to a Himalayan Yogi. After my encounter with the levitating saint, I felt an unshakable pull toward the higher mountains, deeper forests, and more secluded hermitages of the Himalayas. My thirst for spiritual understanding could not be quenched by books or conversations alone. I needed to witness, absorb, and live the teachings of those who had dedicated their entire existence to the divine. It was during this period that I came across a yogi whose reputation was whispered among villagers as one who could traverse vast distances without being seen, who appeared when needed, yet remained untethered by worldly ties. He lived in a hermitage perched on a ridge, surrounded by cliffs, rivers, and ancient pine forests. The path was treacherous, demanding not only physical endurance, but also a steady mind, for the mountains have a way of testing the inner resolve. When I first saw him, he was sitting cross-legged under a large cedar tree, eyes closed, yet fully aware of my approach. Unlike the levitating saint, he did not perform visible miracles. His presence, however, radiated such stillness that it was as if the world itself paused in deference. I felt instantly that I had entered a sacred space where time and ego held no meaning. The Himalayan yogi welcomed me with a simple nod, and through gestures and meditative transmissions, he conveyed that my journey here was not for spectacle or knowledge alone, but for transformation. To know the mountains, he seemed to say without words, you must first know the mind. To know the mind, you must first know the breath. He taught me techniques of pranayama far more subtle than I had ever encountered. Each inhalation, exhalation, and pause was designed to awaken dormant energy channels and align them with cosmic rhythms. Through controlled breathing and visualization, he guided me to feel the flow of life energy not just in the spine, but throughout the entire body, arms, legs, heart, and mind. It was a living map of consciousness. One of the most profound lessons he taught was the art of inner observation. The mind wanders like a wild horse, he instructed. To tame it, you must not pull the reins violently. Instead, ride with awareness. Observe without attachment. Let it understand discipline on its own. Through this method, I learned to witness thoughts without judgment, emotions without attachment, and sensations without clinging. It was a discipline that required patience, humility, and unwavering presence. The yogi also introduced me to Himalayan meditation caves, secluded sanctuaries carved into cliffs where the air was pure and the silence was almost tangible. Here, one could feel the subtle vibrations of the mountains, the earth, and the sky. He explained that these vibrations were not mere sounds. They were messages from the cosmos, guiding those attuned to higher consciousness. Meditating in these caves, I could sense a connection with the universe that went beyond words, beyond teachings, into pure experience. During my stay, the yogi demonstrated another extraordinary phenomenon: the ability to remain in samadhi for hours without movement or fatigue, seemingly untouched by hunger, thirst, or time. Watching him, I realized that the body is truly a vehicle of consciousness, and when the mind surrenders completely to the divine, the limitations of the physical form dissolve naturally. He also emphasized the importance of service and humility in spiritual life. Many seekers are drawn to the Himalayas seeking powers, visions, or fame. Yet he reminded me, the highest yogi is the one who dissolves the self in service, who walks among men unseen, yet leaves a light that guides all who cross his path. His words were subtle, yet carried the weight of countless lifetimes of practice. Before I departed, he shared a secret that would stay with me forever. True awakening is not measured by levitation, miracles, or mystical experiences. It is measured by the depth of love, compassion, and awareness you carry in the world after leaving the mountains. What you learn here must bloom in the hearts of humanity, not remain hidden in caves or peaks. As I descended the ridge, I carried not only teachings and techniques but a deep sense of reverence for the path of the Himalayan yogis. Their life is a testament to the possibilities of human consciousness, showing that the union of mind, body, and spirit is not a distant dream, but a living reality, awaiting those willing to surrender and practice with sincerity. The visits to the Himalayan Yogi reinforced a truth that would guide my entire journey. Spiritual greatness is not in spectacle, but in subtlety, not in power, but in presence, not in the body, but in the awakened soul. Chapter 8. Encounters with Saints and Mystics. After my transformative time with the Himalayan Yogi, I continued my journey deeper into the mountains and remote valleys of northern India and Nepal. The Himalayas, vast and timeless, seemed alive with the silent presence of enlightened beings. Every river, forest, and cliff whispered lessons for those who would listen. It was here that I encountered numerous saints and mystics, each bearing a unique light yet connected by the same thread of divine consciousness. One of the first I met was an old wandering monk, whose eyes shone with the clarity of one who had seen beyond the illusions of life. He lived in a small hut near a glacial river, surviving on alms and the fruits of the forest. Despite his humble appearance, the energy around him was unmistakable. It radiated calmness, wisdom, and immense compassion. When I approached him, he spoke little, but his gaze seemed to pierce the veil of ordinary perception. Through silent guidance and brief dialogues, he imparted the importance of living in harmony with nature. He said, "The mountains do not rush, yet they endure. The rivers do not speak, yet they teach. The wind does not argue, yet it moves everything. Learn to flow like them." These words became a principle I carried into my meditations, to align with natural rhythms rather than resist them, to observe the unfolding of life without interference. In another remote valley, I met a mystic, known for his mastery over subtle energies. He could sense disturbances in the mind and body simply through observation. Sitting in his cave, I felt currents of energy moving through the space as if the very air were alive. Under his guidance, I learned advanced pranayama techniques that not only strengthened the body, but also purified the mind and awakened dormant spiritual capacities. He emphasized the connection between prana, the mind, and divine consciousness, explaining that through careful regulation of breath, one could control the flow of energy and ultimately, the mind itself. I also encountered wandering women saints, rare and often overlooked by society, yet they held immense power and wisdom. One of them, sitting by a small waterfall, taught me the importance of humility and surrender. "The true yogi is neither male nor female, neither young nor old," she said. "It is the soul that practices, not the body. Do not seek to be recognized, seek to be awakened." Her words reinforced that spiritual progress is independent of identity, caste, or social recognition. It is a path of inner realization. Among these encounters, I met a saint who had dedicated his life to the study of sound and vibration. He explained that every sound, whether the rustling of leaves, the flowing of water, or the chanting of mantras, carries a frequency that resonates with different aspects of consciousness. Through mantra meditation, I learned to attune my mind to these subtle vibrations, experiencing how sound can purify the mind, awaken latent energy centers, and connect one directly with the divine. One of the most remarkable encounters was with a mystic who had mastered lucid states of consciousness. He could remain fully aware during deep samadhi, witnessing the movement of energy and thought without attachment. Observing him, I realized that the mind could be a tool for both liberation and guidance. Through his mentorship, I practiced techniques to observe the mind as a detached witness, learning to identify thought patterns, dissolve egoic tendencies, and remain anchored in pure awareness. Throughout these meetings, a common theme emerged. Love, compassion, and humility are inseparable from wisdom. Knowledge alone does not awaken the soul. It is the integration of heart, mind, and spirit that illuminates the path. Every saint, mystic, and yogi I met demonstrated this truth, not through words or texts, but through the living presence of their being. These encounters also highlighted the universality of spiritual principles. Despite differences in appearance, language, or tradition, the teachings were remarkably consistent. They spoke of breath, meditation, energy, love, and union with the divine. It became evident that the Himalayan sages were not separate entities, but threads in the same vast tapestry of consciousness, each revealing a different pattern, yet woven from the same divine source. Finally, I understood that these meetings were not mere coincidences. They were orchestrated by a higher intelligence guiding me along the path. Each encounter was a step, each teaching a layer of preparation, equipping me to integrate and transmit these truths to seekers beyond the mountains. The saints and mystics were living mirrors, reflecting the light I needed to carry forward in my own journey. As I left each hermitage and cave, I carried not only knowledge, but the vibration of their presence. These vibrations became part of my consciousness, quietly shaping my understanding, deepening my meditation, and fostering a compassion that would later guide my teachings. It was in these sacred encounters that I truly began to comprehend the Himalayan tradition, a living, breathing continuum of awakened consciousness accessible to all who earnestly seek.